presidential candidate Mitt Romney is apparently tearing down, completely leveling a $12 million house that he has in California. That's one of like 4 houses that he has. And he was apparently quoted as saying that he's tearing it down and then putting up something completely new because what he currently has there is insufficient to meet his family's needs, or something like that. This guy's running for president, and people are going to vote for him. Now he's pretty much even with President Obama in polling on among potential voters. Romney's even, if not even ahead, I think, in some polls from Obama. And the other Republican challenger to Obama is Rick Perry, who was recently quoted as saying that he's a serious skeptic that humans contribute to climate change. There is something called a Keystone oil pipeline that would extend from something called the tar sands in Canada all the way to Texas. That oil companies or whatever are trying to get built, and environmentalists are vehemently opposed to it. And I count myself among those people. I donated $60 to a organization actively working to protest this pipeline. The New York Times recently posted an editorial opposing the pipeline. Democracy Now! Recently had a story about it. NASA scientist Dr. Jim Hansen is one of the leading environmentalists advocating for serious changes to energy policy that are more environmentally friendly to combat climate change. He's quoted as saying something like, if this Keystone Pipeline goes through, then it's pretty much game over for the climate. That there'd pretty much be no way to avoid very catastrophic climate change. If the carbon dioxide that would be generated by this Keystone Pipeline development is allowed to be sent off into the atmosphere, that it would affect the climate in a way that we would not be able to avoid very serious catastrophic danger. And there are a few scientists, and I know the only one whose name pops immediately to mind is James Lovelock, but I think people like Dr. Jim Hansen, I think there's a growing group of scientists who say that the species, the human species, is under threat, like serious threat, like the species may not be able to survive the effects. I think it's easy to be dismissive of that kind of alarmism, uh, and certainly there's a psychological motivation too. Because how can you just go to work knowing that the people in charge, the people who have their hands on the button, are just slowly leading us down a path to the destruction of our species? And to sit here talking about it, someone watching me talk about that, it's got to sound like complete lunatic, extremist points of view that, this issue that I care about has to be addressed or the human species is at stake. That's not a position that one should come to lightly or easily. It better have a lot of credibility or people are going to dismiss you pretty quick. But I think people care. I was looking at a article posted this year on worldpublicopinion.org, exactly program on international policy attitudes. And they had studied public opinion on the budget, the United States federal budget, and they found that the general public has a lot of disagreements with both the Republican-led House of Representatives and the Obama administration. And out on many policies, the general public actually, their views are actually to the left of the majority of the general public, hold views to the left of both the Obama administration and certainly the Republican-led House of Representatives. Going back to the environmental issue, one thing I'm quoting now, energy and the environment were also major areas of difference. United States House of Representatives bill cuts the Department of Energy's work on renewables and efficiency by 36%, while the Obama administration increases it 44%. The public went even further, increasing it 110%. The White House cuts the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency's budget by 39%. Or the House of Representatives cuts it by 39%. The Obama administration cuts it by 13%. The public, on average, increased spending on pollution control by 17%. So the public, not just Democrats, but the general public, is concerned about the environment and does consider it a priority. And if the federal government were truly acting, were truly representing the opinion of the public, there'd be a lot more work done in favor of finding more renewable sources of energy and energy efficiency in the United States, as well as controlling pollution, much more than either Republicans or the Obama administration are doing. So that tells you a little something, I think, about the state of democracy, that we don't really have one in the United States. If we're going to elect people who then just don't do what the general public wants ever, unless it coincides with the interests of the rich, if it otherwise is completely dismissed what the public wants, then how is it a democracy? How is it a government operating for the people? At the same time, we find polls showing that there's just as many people willing to elect Rick Perry, who denies the reality of man-made climate change. Not only doesn't think it's something to work up an apocalyptic frenzy over. He doesn't even think it's real. He's unconvinced that it's even real in the first place. Public is actually willing to support this guy despite the opinion that I just cited. And likewise, when we have nearly 20% underemployment, there's as much dissatisfaction with big business as there probably has ever been, and probably since the Great Depression in this country. Likewise, there's as many people willing to vote for Mitt Romney, who wants to tear down his $12 million house because it doesn't fit his family's needs. As many people are willing to vote for him as for President Barack Obama. And I don't really mean that as simply a criticism on the people themselves who would vote for Romney and Rick Perry. Like I said, I don't think Barack Obama, he's maybe doing a little bit more in the public's interest, but not a whole lot more. He's still aggressively pursuing Wall Street campaign donations, and he's not going to get those donations unless he does what the big money people on Wall Street want him to do. I do feel like people at least have that at least fairly perceive it, that and I think you can judge it by the congressional approval ratings and President Obama's approval ratings. I think people generally understand that elected officials just are not working in their interest. People have pointed out that from the last three major elections in 2006, 2008, and 2010, the theme of all elections has been an anti-incumbency fervor, with Democrats taking Congress in 2006 from the Republicans, then taking the White House from Republicans in 2008, and then in 2010, Republicans almost completely taking Congress back. They did take one House of Congress, they almost took a second one back from the Democrats. And now you have Republicans and Democrats running, the President Obama running neck and neck with Republicans for the presidential candidacy. Obviously, it's very strange. It's kind of sad that, people can't just en masse make this decision to just not support either party. I think Ross Perot, I'd have to double check my numbers, but I think in the 1990s, I think there was at least one election where Ross Perot garnered votes in the double-digit percentages, like maybe something like 18% in one of them. I could be way off. He wasn't really very far outside the box politically, I don't think. He was, I don't know. I guess the question would be, which third-party candidate would people rally around? You would like to think that if people really do have these opinions that are to the left of both Obama and the Republicans, you would think, a candidate further to the left would be able to garner popular support, but not too likely when most major media are run by major corporations. These are corporations that are part of the system that is being perpetuated by Republicans and Democrats. It's hard to believe that someone outside that system is going to get a particularly fair shake. And anyway, election politics is not the only way to exert power and influence for ordinary people. Change comes from the bottom up, that all the great changes in history, women's rights, labor rights, union rights, fair wages, fair working conditions, no child labor, civil rights in the 60s, and now gay rights. These are not societal changes that go top down. They start with ordinary people and work their way up. That's my belief anyway, and I know I'm echoing the beliefs of much more prominent thinkers. And as a history major who has taken more than a few history classes, I think history vindicates that point of view, that eventually change doesn't fully happen until it gets up to the upper levels, but it never starts there. It starts at the bottom and works its way up. Positive change,